we came by that name of the Colorado Springs and Interurban Railway, and this was the name of the last streetcar system that ran here in Colorado Springs, which operated here from 1901 to 1932. And believe it or not, the company still exists. It is owned by the Myron Stratton home, and they very graciously have given us permission to use that name once again as a DBA. When we begin operation on the streets here in Colorado Springs, our cars will all be operating under that name. So it is our way of keeping the history of the company alive here in the city.
Since its inception in 1982, the Pikes Peak Historical Street Railway Foundation has been an all-volunteer nonprofit organization. Doing business as the Colorado Springs and Urban Railway, the name of the last streetcar company in the Springs, all funds received go towards the organization's mission. The offices, museum, and restoration shop are located at 2333 Steel Drive in the remaining 4 stalls of a 16-stall Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railway roundhouse built in 1888.
We have a timeline as we have set up, and we start over here before streetcars, horse-drawn cars, horse and buggy. Now we're looking at 3 major timelines. Up there, you'll see the Colorado Springs Rapid Transit Railway era, beginning from horse-drawn and mule-drawn cars to electric-operated cars. In this particular picture, you can see where it says Roswell is destination. That is where we are at right here, Roswell, which was a railroad town until the late 40s for the Chicago Rock Island Railway. Then we move along to the Colorado Springs and Suburban Railway era, 1900, 1901. And here we have Winfred Scott Stratton, who made his millions in Cripple Creek at the Independence Mine. He sold that and he came to Colorado Springs and started setting everything up. What he did was take this plus that, and then on the opposite side of this, over in here we're showing the Colorado Springs and Interurban Railway era, 1901 to 1932. The system was shut down on April 30th, 1932. It was just not profitable to be operating streetcars in Colorado Springs at that time. People started getting their own automobiles, and ridership started going down. Consequently, both here in Colorado Springs and across the country.
We're maintaining a full-scale museum which deals with the history of the street railway system here in Colorado Springs. And we maintain a large amount of street railway artifacts. We have 12 streetcars in our collection at the moment, several of which are being rebuilt for operation on the city streets as we speak. And we also have a collection of other railroad equipment on hand. As a matter of fact, the Pikes Peak Historical Street Railway Foundation is an umbrella organization over a total of 4 different museums here. We have our own collection of equipment, which basically consists of 1 museum. We have a Rock Island Museum at Roswell that deals with the history of the Rock Island Railroad here, and that is another museum. And then we have the Museum of the Railroad Worker, which is owned and operated by another gentleman
Well, my name's Daniel Quiet, and in 2001 I formed the Museum of Railway Workers. And what happened was, around the end of the 1990s, the Union Pacific had merged with the Rio Grande Railroad and was slowly but surely scrapping a lot of very old equipment that the Rio Grande was using. And there was an opportunity to start. First I purchased cabooses from the scrapyard, and then later on was fortunate enough to purchase passenger cars and eventually a work train. And this led me into the possibility of putting together a museum that, instead of focusing on equipment, spent a lot more effort focusing on what the people do, the people who actually worked on the railroads. And so it led me into beginning with oral histories, talking to some of the railway workers, and then not only getting the equipment, then finding out by talking to the people that did it what exactly that was used for. Why is even a freight car significant for what it did? And what it turned out was that there were a lot of very interesting stories, true about the equipment, but a lot more about the workers, some of the things that they did, the camaraderie that they had. This isn't just the Rio Grande. These are, I guess, from many different kinds of Western railroads.
And then we have the Friends of the Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railway.
Our organization is called the Friends of the Cumbres and Toltec Narrow Gauge Railroad. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary, and our mission is to restore the cars and the structures on the Cumbres and Toltec Railroad, which goes from Antonito, Colorado to Chama, New Mexico. That's a 64-mile section of the original Denver and Rio Grande narrow gauge connection. The railroad is jointly owned by the states of Colorado and New Mexico. And the actual running of the trains is done by a management company, and the Friends, which the organization we represent, does the interpretation of the railroad historically for the visiting public, and helps to maintain and restore the old equipment which is not used for hauling passengers, such as this car. This car will go back to Chama and be put on display as an example of the way people moved across the country in the late 1800s. And over here is a 40-foot pod we've got to set up a woodworking shop. So much of the woodworking that will be done will be here, and also some done in our home shops, where we have perhaps a little more room and a little bit more sophisticated equipment. And we have a trailer here where most of our metalworking is done. Another one of our work areas where some storage and more of the metalworking is done.
Oh no, you caught me working. Picking up brackets for our new shelter to be.
Okay, this car was built by the Pullman Company in 1889 and purchased by the Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroad, and was used on the narrow gauge system to haul passengers. This was not the real fancy Pullman cars like everybody knows about, but was called a immigrant sleeper or tourist sleeper car. It was used by the Denver and Rio Grande for several years, and then sold to the Colorado Northwestern, which became the Denver and Northwestern, I believe. Then it was sold to the Western Union Company, and they used it as a maintenance car. It was abandoned, and the Rio Grande reacquired it. It has been sitting in Chama, New Mexico for many, many years, and we brought it up here to restore it, hopefully back to its original condition as built in 1889. It's probably a 5 to 6 year project.
So we have quite a varied collection and a lot of interesting things going on here on this property.
This is part of the original roundhouse here was built in 1888. What is left is 4 bays of a 16-bay roundhouse, and steam locomotives had been brought into this building way back in 1888. This is our workshop. Here is car number 135, which was originally Fort Collins car number 22. As you can see on top there, we have our CS&I railway name. Normally speaking, we keep the same numbers of the cars as what they originally had, except in this instance, Colorado Springs had various Bernies running. We had car numbers 100 to 134. So we elected to number this 135, the return of the Bernie to Colorado Springs.
I'm currently sitting in a 1947 streetcar. This is a car known as a PCC type car that was originally designed in 1935. This particular car was built in 1947. It was designed by a committee of street railway presidents, hence the name President's Conference Committee, or PCC type car. And this particular car, of which we have 9, and they are identical, came from Philadelphia. And we acquired it in 1994. And as I say, we have 9 of them, and they are all in very excellent condition. And these are literally known as the cars that simply will not die. They are extremely well-built cars, very simple to maintain. And this type of car, of course, San Francisco is the largest operator of this type of car today. But they are still in operation in Boston, Philadelphia. They're operating in Kenosha, Wisconsin, San Diego, and there's a couple of them operating in, well, I believe there's one in Tucson. There's a couple in Dallas. Wherever these cars are operating today, there is not a one of them that isn't at least 60 years old or more. Matter of fact, the cars that are currently operating today in Boston were just several years ago totally rebuilt for another 30, 35 years of service. And those cars were well over 60 years old when they were rebuilt. And these cars today have literally a cult following across this country. And they're going to be around for some time to come because they are so well built, and they are pure Art Deco in their design And the cars that still exist still have their original design. Well, they have not been redesigned or anything else. When they're rebuilt, they're done so electrically and mechanically, but they still have their original body design. And so they look just like they did when they were built in the late 1930s and 40s. And so this car that we're on has got a row of seats down one side, a single row and double row on the other.
For any of you that have not heard, our operator today is Irene Bone. She is the youngest and the oldest PTC operator living in the United States today. She started in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at age 21.
That's amazing.
And she's 23 now.
But they are very smooth riding cars, they're quiet, extremely economical to operate, and they were clean, efficient, and green transit. You bet they were, long before the term was ever invented. And so they fit right into the ecology of today. And so they're just as modern today as they were back in the 1930s. So they're very apropos for today's transit. Matter of fact, a lot of they were the precursor of the light rail transit vehicles that we see operating today. A lot of the same technology, though modernized, you'll find in the cars that are running today.
Restoration tasks beyond the capabilities available at the Roswell facility on Steel Drive require outside vendors. The next segment, filmed at Ulrich Locomotive Works in Strasburg, Colorado, shows such a company. Over half a century old, this family-owned firm possesses the expertise, a machine shop, and a foundry for working on historic railroad equipment. The video and discussion are about a matched grant awarded by the Colorado State Historical Fund for restoration work on Colorado Springs Interurban car number 59, a Colorado Springs original built in 1901.
is Lori Dunkley from the State Historical Fund, and I'm here to talk about why the State Historical Fund has been partnering with the Pikes Peak Historical Street Railway Foundation in restoring all of these transportation resources that are important to Colorado. The State Historical Fund gives grants for historic preservation and also expertise in how to carry out the historic preservation of archaeological and architectural treasures across Colorado. Since '93, we have distributed about $211 million in grants to more than 3,300 grants across Colorado to all kinds of projects: courthouses, schools, archaeological sites, agricultural sites, and of course transportation resources, such as we're looking at now in the Uric shop. And the reason why it's important for the State Historical Fund to become involved with these restorations is that keeping a record of Colorado's transportation history is important to the fund as part of the Colorado Historical Society, because transportation is the story of how people moved to Colorado and where they went in Colorado and who went and who didn't and what they brought with them and what they didn't bring with them, and that all is part of our story and part of our history. And so when we look at these railway cars and trolleys, we're looking at the physical embodiment of this history, and so we want to save them for the new generations to come and learn about. And in the process, we're boosting Colorado's economy by restoring these because they're heritage tourism attractions for people. So we're just really pleased to be part of this project, and we look forward to seeing all of these cars on the road.
I'm Nan Rickey, and I'm with the Colorado State Historical Society State Historical Fund, and it consists of tending to the technical aspects of the restoration projects that we give grants for. Actually, I normally work with buildings, and so on this particular project, I am really not a technical specialist because I don't know very much at all about street railway cars. And these two gentlemen are the technical experts. Mr. Howard Noble, who is Vice President of the Street Railway Association, and Greg Roberts, who is their technical specialist. And they have been teaching me about what goes into a railroad car and what happens when all of the machinery is going in the right direction. We spent the morning looking at, what was that?
We're looking at a Taylor 1924 truck that's going to be rebuilt and put under a 1901 streetcar.
And it was fascinating. I didn't have any previous knowledge of how electricity was transmitted through the machinery of the thing to make the whole thing run. We looked at the part that makes the streetcar turn a corner. It was absolutely wonderful. Howard, on the other hand, is my manager in partnership of taking care of all the paperwork, and that's when I first think we started working together.
That is correct.
It was about 4 or 5 years ago, wasn't it?
Yes, I believe it was.
It was a long time. Well, restoration is a slow process, and our car or railroad restoration is even slower because there is a degree of thoroughness and attention to detail in these restoration projects that goes way beyond what is normally done in an architectural restoration. Obviously, these cars are going to run on the streets, and they have to be just as safe as they would be were they operating 100 years ago, and maybe safer, as a matter of fact. And I think that the whole business of getting the work done takes a long period of time and a real careful attention to detail. And maybe, Greg, you could tell the people in the audience about how they loosen and that they're replacing the bolts with ones that are superior to what were used.
When we rebuild these trucks, you have bolts that have been frozen on there, in this particular case, since at least probably 1951, which was the last time that truck was rebuilt, and you frequently have to put some kind of a solvent on there and then hit them with a torch to heat them up to crack loose any corrosion in there. But all those bolts will be replaced with what are called grade 8 replacements. They have a tensile strength of 180 some odd thousand pounds per square inch, whereas something you buy at the local hardware store may be around 45 or 50,000. And this is required to produce a good, solid, safe truck, because people are going to be riding on this vehicle. And there are other things that you do, upgrades and wire and things that don't appear to the public, but actually make the vehicle more reliable and safer than it was. Materials that they see have to be duplicated, and there's like 8 different kinds of wood in that car, and sometimes finding the wood properly dried, grain structure and everything can take a couple of years to get just the pieces you need.
And that's an example of the care with which these gentlemen work with these old cars, so that when the final result rolls down the tracks, you see something that looks perfectly beautiful but is an exact replica in most regards of what was originally seen by people 100 years ago.
You're seeing a plasma cutter removing an old water tank in Southern Pacific car number 10400. Built in 1938, this dining car ran on numerous passenger trains until 1968, when it went into what is called work car service. It served railroad workers working on track in southern Arizona. Now owned by the Museum of Railway Workers, it is in the beginning stages of restoration at the Colorado Springs and Interurban Railway Roswell facility. When we opened up this one day, we got a 6-inch waterfall of dead pigeons and pigeon refuse where they'd collected in there, and that we call the Chamber of Horrors. This is a copy of the Southern Pacific car card from some records still out in California in an archive. And you can see that this was dated 1967, and it shows that the car had some interim paint work, which would have been on the top, not the stainless steel obviously, in 66. And then in 67 it went in to be converted to a Southern Pacific maintenance away car, to the work car, and then it came out of the shop in December of 67 where it had been converted to a dinner bunk car. You can also see that the original purchase price of the car was $89,747.61, which would have been back in January of 1938. It was finished in the 15th of January, and this shows it went in service 3 days later, which would have meant there was 3 days that it took it to get from the Pullman plant back in Illinois to Southern Pacific track.
You can remember this as the blizzard of 2009.
Won't have any trouble remembering your anniversary.